I hope you all enjoyed your lunches out there, and hopefully joining us today for some afternoon cricket. It's certainly a beautiful day that we look out upon here. For those joining us, Somerset and Durham here in this clash. It's an exciting clash, certainly two attractive teams. We've got Graham Onions, of course, who played a few tests for England, took a wicket, I seem to remember, on the first ball of a day's play. Very exciting bowler, probably be in my England 11 in a lot of ways, but he's here today. And Nick Compton's been batting very quietly and resolutely. The score at lunch, Somerset 82 for 1, Sapphire 16, Compton 23. And this county championship match promises to be an exciting one, does it not? And I'm joined here by my colleague, who I'm very happy to see. And what a beautiful scene the ground is today.
Yes, it certainly is, Ben. You look out across the lovely green sward of the ground itself and all the lovely surroundings, the Colin Atkinson Pavilion, Surrey and Botham Stand, Trescothick Stand, Somerset Stand, Gimblet Hill, all these appropriately named parts of the ground.
Indeed. So, first ball after lunch. As the bowler comes in, and that's on off stump and played out for no runs by Sapphire. Nice stroke. This LV County Championship clash between Durham and Somerset, as I say. Welcome to our listeners, and certainly the scene today is perfect for batting. Certainly Trescothick would have been hoping for a century. Sadly, he was out before lunch, but Somerset 82 for 1 and Trescothick's 36. It was ended by Graham Onions as the bowler comes in again, and that's on off stump and played out for no run. So Somerset, of course, won the toss and elected to bat, something you definitely do today, and it's beautiful batting weather. We've got quite a offside heavy field here. We've got a extra cover and a point, or sort of cover point really, a conventional point, a sort of gully and two slips. As the bowler comes steaming in now and bowls, and that's on driven up to mid on, but doesn't take a run, and the score remains the same. So Stokes with the number 38 on his back, Ben Stokes, another exciting cricketer to keep your eyes on. And once again, he comes steaming in now, sort of medium pace really. Big appeal, no, they're going to go up for LBW appeal to Sapphire there, but they dipped out of the appeal. I think probably because he got a thick inside edge onto that one, and there was no appeal, a kind of aborted appeal. So that suggests that had he not got the nick, there would have been an almighty appeal, but Sapphire can rest easy. Compton has been in for 120 minutes in all today, 87 balls, only 1-4, as Stokes comes in again past the umpire and bowls short outside the off stump, worked away up to cover point off the back foot for no run.
So you have Stokes down. He's not actually on the scorecard. Could you just tell me who he's in place of?
Not sure who he's in place of, I must admit. I know that it's fresh from... Let me see. I would assume...
Wood bowled this morning, Onions bowled, Buckley bowled.
Probably Thorpe, as it's on middle and leg and worked up to mid-on for no run, and that's the end of the over. Yes, I think it's Thorpe.
Thank you very much, man.
But Onions, 9 overs, no maidens, 1 for 17, and an economy rate of 1.88. I must admit he'd probably get my vote above Stephen Finn in the England side, but thankfully nobody lets me near selecting England, thank goodness. But he's certainly been there for me every time. Certainly that amazing occasion when he took that wicket, I think with the first ball of a test match. I think it was either that or a day's play. I think it was a test match back in 2009. It's certainly one that lives long in the memory. Anyway, Nick Compton is now taking guard, and Ryan Buckley is about to come on. The authoritative tones of our former commentator Julian Katanak over the PA there. As Buckley.
I think it's Ryan Buckley's debut.
Indeed. On off stump, left alone by Compton through to the keeper. Yes, exciting occasion for him, and what a lovely day it is. It's beautiful. Not a cloud in the sky, really. It's, well, sort of hazy. No clouds over the Quantocks, really, as Buckley, and again, played up back to the bowler by Compton for no run. There's a mid-off, a mid-on. There's a short-ish mid-wicket. There's a point, cover point, and just the one slip and a short leg. As Buckley in again, bowls, driven hard, but well stopped. He pounced down on that quite quickly as the birds tweet away in the background. It's certainly a lovely sunny day. Don't want to get too sunburnt. The ground well full, about 2/3 full, as Buckley in again, bowls, and that's outside the off stump and worked off the back foot up to cover point for no run. And it's one of those lovely balmy days that you want to be watching cricket in, really. Really relaxing, nice atmosphere here as Buckley's in, and that's a quicker one, which he edges. He's not going to get 4, I don't think, but he's taken 1. He's thinking of a second, but doesn't take it. And it's returned to the keeper very smartly and quickly there. And they took a single. So we've got a fielder coming in at a sort of silly mid-off, have we? Yes, I think so. He's sort of coming in, so he's sort of crowded. He's got chap on the leg side and a chap on the offside, quite close up now. As Buckley comes in again, bowls, and that's played forward past that fielder up to cover point for no run. And yes, certainly looking out at this ground, it really is. It couldn't be a lovelier sight, really. It's a silly point, really, to be accurate about that field placing, and a short leg. And the over is already gone. Goodness, spinners get through them very quickly. At the end of that over, Somerset move on to 83 for 1. And we've got Stokes getting ready to run in again, probably about 78, 80 miles an hour, sort of Collingwood style pace perhaps. And he's going to bowl to Compton, I believe, now, who waits patiently, resolutely. Real test match type innings today as Stokes is in, and he's hit that in the air past where there would be a third slip, and it's gone for a very rare commodity in Compton's innings, 4 runs, but that was a flash outside the off stump, uncharacteristic, but it went away for 4 runs, and they'll be wishing they'd had already a second or third slip in there to swallow. Actually a third slip in there to swallow that. It went perfect gap really between second slip and gully. Couldn't have been placed better really. So Ben Stokes, the exciting young cricketer.
I don't think that's where he intended it to go.
No, exactly. I was being sarcastic.
Oh, right.
In comes Stokes and bowls, and that's on middle and off, but played out up and onto the onside to mid-on for no run, and Compton sort of walks away. But that was very lucky for Compton there. It was edged, and disappointing for the bowler, who... of course, hasn't played many ODIs for England. He made his debut, played a few in 2011. Stokes comes in again and bowls, and that's driven, nice stroke, much more convincing. There's not going to be 4. There's a fielder out there on the leg side boundary, but he comes back for a couple of runs, so well run. And that'll ease the pressure. Nice on drive there, much more convincing a stroke. That was an uncharacteristic flash outside the off stump, really, earlier on, but a few balls ago. But there's a mid-off, mid-on, there's an extra cover, there's a point, there's a gully, there's 2 slips. As Stokes comes in again, and that's down the leg side. He goes to whip that away, a kind of leg glance, but misses and takes a leg by out on the leg side. Taunton, not a rustic scene today, but it had a slight rustic edge to it, I thought, because one of the roads, the main road, was closed, and you could walk up the main road rather the way you would have probably in the old days before motor cars took over, and it was rather charming actually. One wished it was cobbled, but rather like the way it is walking from that main road down to the ground here, though of course cars drive up there, which is most disconcerting. And there's a big appeal for LBW, and not out. He went back, Sapphire, and Stokes, well, it was a big-ish appeal, not over-convincing, perhaps down the leg side, but yes, it always catches me out walking from the main road to the main gates, because it's cobbled. It almost makes you think it's not going to have cars on it, but you can have a nasty surprise.
I don't think some of the traders in that area will share your nostalgic affection.
No.
Because I think they're missing out, unfortunately.
Indeed. As Stokes is in again, and that's driven up to mid-on for no run. Nice, more fluent stroke from Sapphire. Yes, it was just a bit more relaxed, really. One's always having to worry about crossing the roads and cars going hither and thither, so it's quite pleasant. But that's the end of the over. And the two batsmen are on Sapphire 16, Compton 30, Somerset 90 for 1, overs remaining 61 overs today, and Trescothick, of course, out for 36 today. As
So it's going to be Ryan Buckley coming in now from the old pavilion, the next three.
Many thanks. Yes, thank you very much. And we've got Stokes continuing again from the Ian Botham stand end. The seagulls fly in quite high up in the sky this time, not swooping down as they often do. Perhaps they enjoy the heat of the sun going further up, or perhaps it's cooler up there, actually, thinking about it logically. But anyhow, the Quantock Hills, with all their associations with all the great poets down the years, Coleridge and Wordsworth, are a beautiful, beautiful sight today, as Stokes comes in and bowls on off stump and played back to the bowler for no run. And what an inspiration those hills were for the great literary giants of the past and great cricketing giants of the past, of course. Of course, if you're interested in your cricket history, I always recommend the museum at the ground, which is absolutely fascinating. Some wonderful memorabilia from the days of Viv Richards and Joel Garner and Botham and Arthur Wellard going back further. And as Stokes comes in, and that's on off stump and played up onto the onside up to mid-on, and there's no run. And I seem to remember last time I went in there seeing Ian Botham's famous Headingley bat from 1981 covered in red marks. It was quite a sight, actually. You can see how well he hit the ball that day from the marks on the bat. It was almost like time travel, because it could have been made last week, the bat. Anyway, Stokes comes in again. Compton's bat slightly raised, bowls, and that's short, and he works that away on the offside. More convincing stroke, head over the ball, right foot went back properly over the ball this time. None of this flashing outside off stump, which got him potentially out a few overs ago and also caused him to be beaten outside the off stump. There's a mid-off, there's a mid-on, there's two slips, there's a point and a gully, extra cover, as Stokes, about a third of the way, not that far back to the stand, runs in, shortish run up, and it's played nicely, convincingly by Compton, back to the bowler, forward defensive, as mid-off rubs the ball voraciously. And of course elsewhere we've got the Champions Trophy starting today. Possibly, I don't remember there being such an air of excitement around a tournament before, maybe because the last few World Cups haven't been too successful, but the joke is it's the last ever Champions Trophy. So anyway, Stokes in again, and that's on off stump and played back and up to, off the back foot up to mid-off, and there's no run. Compton, of course, going through an interesting psychological phase at the moment with his England career starting, and really he hasn't done that badly at all. Just had a couple of bad games, and that always happens to cricketers. Let's hope he gets other chances, as Compton waits, bat slightly raised again, a la Jack Callis, and played up to mid-on for a jogged through singles. Stokes kind of has his hands on his head there and shakes his head as if he was perhaps, I don't know, hoping for an LBW shout had he missed that, but he was in control of the shot from day one, really.
So the Champions Trophy, Ben,
yes.
is it 50 overs a side?
It is, yes.
So England play Australia on Saturday, I believe.
Yeah, should be exciting. Of course, Australia bowled out for 60-odd the other day, which was... when you think Mike Hussey still in his prime, it does seem sad. And then, of course, there's other batsmen like Katic and Phil Jakes that spring to mind, and
yes, indeed,
Hussey's David Hussey, of course, batsmen that one's surprised that they've overlooked, given
with experience of English conditions too.
Yes. Anyway, the spinner's in again, Buckley, and that's on middle and leg and played back to the bowler for no run. Yes, it's surprising in a way. I always like the look of Khawaja. I always think he looks the part, but his figures aren't too smart at the moment.
No.
But he looks a good player. You feel he's just an innings away from breaking through as Buckley has played nicely out on the onside. That's going to be 4, is it? Beautifully timed on drive from Compton. And it is 4. Yes, just dribbles over the boundary boards as we speak. That was much more convincing. OK, it wasn't a great delivery. It was on the leg stump, but it was clipped away merrily by Compton, who now pats the crease as the sun goes in, actually. We've been spoilt with the... Managed to come out again, but been spoilt with the warm, sunny conditions today. It's been beautiful here in the southwest. As a crouched short leg away, it's no silly point for Compton, I notice. That's usually for Sapphire, as Buckley bowls a quicker one outside off stump and played backward of point there for no run. And the clouds come over. Still a warmish day. It's going to be a good month, apparently, weather-wise. So, as Buckley's in again, that's flighted and driven up to cover for no run. Familiar figure of Graham Onions at mid-off with his always quite slim Jim, as they say, with his stubble and sunglasses, and that's play forward, bat and pad close together by Compton. Everything correct about that. Back to the bowler. As the sun comes out again, and got a nicely filled stand to our right as well. You might hear them clapping occasionally. Good to see the ground fairly full today. And that squirted out on the leg side down to square leg for no run. Far too quickly for square leg to leap across and try and catch it, but and played down by Compton as well with the angle of the bats. There was no real chance of a wicket, but there was a few oohs and ahs from the fielding side as they end the over there. Stokes already getting into position. The over rate's pretty good here. In the friendlies, in the Champions Trophy, it certainly wasn't. So good to see the bowlers getting on with it. So, Somerset 106 for 1, Sapphire 23, Compton 37. For those just, we can't say tuning in, can we? Logging on, or well, you can tune in actually in Taunton and the surroundings area on FM. As Stokes in again, slightly quicker than usual, but hits that nicely though, Sapphire up to mid-off for no run. Both batsmen looking very similar here in their red helmets, and both have a similar habit of walking off towards square leg. Of course, Chris Tavray, the old England player that played for Somerset for a couple of seasons from Kent, he, back in the 80s, he used to walk all the way to square leg. It was most extraordinary. As Stokes comes in, and that's clipped away on the leg side. That's going to be, no, there's a fielder down there on the square leg boundary who picks it up. That's Onions. And they take a quick single. And yes, he used to walk off to square leg. The only batsman around now one can perhaps compare to those sorts of idiosyncratic behaviours is certainly Jonathan Trott and Chanderpaul, of course, who always picks up a bail and hammers it in the crease before he faces the ball. I think Sarwan actually does the same thing, who might be playing in the Champions Trophy for the West Indies, as Stokes is played up to mid-off again. His cover runs across but lets it dribble through to mid-off, who picks it up, and there's no run. He flats on the left. The Pegasus Apartments look their usual self there, with the seagulls fluttering in front of them. Not many people watching up there, which is surprising, but certainly the ground itself is well attended today, as Stokes is in again, and that's left alone by Sapphire. Has nothing to do with that one. does that familiar little series of actions, deep in concentration, taps the wicket with his bat, and Stokes is already on the way back for another delivery. Lots of plans afoot for this ground. I think the old pavilion might be being demolished soon. I was hearing rumours of. I know there's been rumours of it for years. As Stokes comes in, that's left alone by Sapphire, who shoulders arms.
Yes, I've heard about various developments, and I think they're well in the planning stages now, although I don't think the old pavilion, I used to think it was a listed building, but apparently it's not. So I suppose they can knock it down without too much of a problem.
Yeah, I must admit, being a
excuse me,
lover of history, I'm kind of sad about it, but I can understand why, I suppose, as Stokes comes in, and that's a quicker one again, played out to point for no run. That's the end of the over. Yes, it's sort of... I remember seeing some classic footage of Jack Hobbs coming out of the old pavilion at Taunton, on Pathé News, I think it was, 1930. I think it was either that or 31. It was certainly in the 1930s, and whether that was the same pavilion as is here now, I don't know. Obviously, Viv and Joel and Beefy will have walked out of this pavilion, I assume. But no, I mean, it's not architecturally stunning, obviously. It's... and I suppose, bits get replaced, whether there's anything much left of the original pavilion. Yes. Who knows? The ghost of it obviously is here, but Buckley's in, and that's driven right into Silly Point, who is hit and goes right down and looks like he's been hurt, but he isn't. He gets right up, and there's no problem at all. Kicks the turf with one foot, and winces a little bit, but looks fully recovered within seconds. Probably most people who aren't cricketers will probably be chuntering about that for hours, but he just carries on regardless, as that's played up back to the bowler for no run. So there's a Silly Point who is now hobbling about again, looking skyward with anguish. Square leg, there's one slip. Buckley comes down the wicket, hits it hard down the ground. That's going to be 4 runs. One bounce over into... Gimlet Hill there, lovely stroke, driven down the ground there, beautiful shot really, came down the ground and hit it straight. Sapphire goes on to 28 with that shot, and that was a thoroughly convincing stroke, no danger to it. It was hit way above Onions at mid-off and went sailing over down there to the boundary as Buckley's in again and driven hard, but up to Graham Onions, who goes down on one knee and picks it up. But yes, there's been a lot of developments in recent years. There's the Andrew Caddick Pavilion, the Viridor building behind it, which is red brick, not the nicest looking building, but there's that one's on off leg stump and whipped away beautifully out onto the leg side. That's a lovely on drive, and he's going to get 3, I think, possibly 4. No, it's saved down there on the boundary, and Sapphire takes 3 runs, and that was well stopped. My ultra-powerful binoculars are not with me today. Unfortunately, a rather absent-minded fashion. I left them at home, so I think that was Jennings, I just make out, who ran across to field that on that leg side boundary. So well done him, as we've got a Silly Point's gone now. Square leg just for Compton as Buckley's in again, and Compton comes down, does a little shimmy down the wicket and goes to sort of try and work that way through the leg side, but short mid wicket's having none of it, who is Stokes, who immediately comes across to begin his next over, and that is the end of the over. The Somerset score is 114 for 1, Sapphire 31 and Compton 37, and these two looking in much better nick in the last couple of overs.
Yes, I think that's true to say. Both of them don't look in any trouble at all, really. So they really wouldn't need to try and push the score along. So the score is 122 for 1. Harold Sapphire's on 36. Nick Compton is on 40.
Yes, indeed. And that was a really good stop there by mid-off. It was hit beautifully. It was a lovely off-drive, hit up the ground towards the Colin Atkinson Pavilion. But it was well dived on. The fielders all having a A little kind of break amongst themselves at the minute. I don't think there's drinks happening, but just took an extra second there to rearrange themselves for the next over. But the Marcus Trescothick stand pretty much full up. Beautiful sight from here on our left. Beautifully attended, of course, Taunton for County Championship games, which is lovely to see, really. Of course, this match starting on a Thursday reminds you a little bit of Test matches starting on a Thursday. Gives it a sort of almost an important air. It's an important match, of course, but it gives it an even more important feel as Compton with 2 slips waiting, and he's beaten outside the off stump, and the keeper kind of snuffled that take a little bit. No, he actually did attempt a stumping there, and that was very quick actually, and Compton perhaps was slightly tempted to come down the wicket, but obviously was well within his ground. Buckley in again with 1 short leg, no silly point. That's driven hard nicely, but there's a chap out on the boundary. No, it's 4. Goes past him into the boundary boards as I speak, and that's a real shot of authority there. He'll be very pleased with that stroke. Takes him to 44 because, to be honest, Sapphire, who's on 36, has looked more like Compton than Compton since lunch. He's hit some lovely strokes, Sapphire, both sides of the wicket. But Compton there, that was much more like it. Lovely extra cover drive as Buckley's. And again, he's down the wicket, heaves it hard and straight. That's coming straight for the commentary box. And it's going to be 6. Beautiful stroke. Straight down the ground, in the air. And he raises his bat with some style and panache. That was almost a lazy David Gower style straight on drive down the ground, even though he's a right-hander. It was almost in slow motion there, and the ball was in the air for a long time and made a satisfying thump into the behind the boundary boards for that magnificent 6. Just for a moment we thought it was going to come and hit the box, but it wasn't quite hit that hard. But it was a lovely, beautifully timed stroke, and that's a fine half century from Nick Compton, who waits now for Buckley to come in, and details of Compton's innings I'll have for you in a second. And Buckley bowls a quicker one on leg stump, plays it down to short leg. Compton's innings, 164 minutes, 129 balls, 4 fours and 1 6. So 2 really good strokes in this over from a man that batted so slowly in the morning. It was quite extraordinary as Buckley bowls one down the leg side, played out to square leg for no run. And he really reminded me of Chris Tavares, or one of these sort of batsmen that bats really, really slowly this morning. But those 2 strokes much more fluent, particularly that beautiful classical straight drive, and probably one of the most pleasing aesthetic strokes in cricket, as he plays that round the corner to short leg for no run. Of course, Compton has that air of class about him as that brings around the end of the over. I was always surprised that he wasn't talked about earlier for England in a way. But at the moment, with Root pressing for a place as an opener, it's looking rather sticky for him. But he certainly will please the selectors with a high score here. And at the moment, he's really put the effort in to make sure that happens. Anyway, we've got possibly a change of bowling. Graham Onions, yes. So exciting to see Graham Onions steaming in now. We've got him coming in to bowl to Sapphire. Compton, of course, off strike, having faced the spinners over there. So Graham Onions, a really sticky customer to face, a difficult bowler to face. He's a fine bowler. He's just setting his field. He's got a point, an extra cover. He's got a mid-off and a mid-on. He's got a chap running from what would have been like a short mid-wicket to run over to gully. And we've got 2 slips. And he's having a big conversation there with his captain to do with probably traps being set and ideas being shared, strategies being worked out to the particular batsman. 2 right-handers who look well set. As Onions arms pumping in, bowls past the umpire on leg stump. Appeal for LBW, but he's not out. It was down the leg side. He came in there with some, I don't know what he had for breakfast, but he was bouncing in there with real enthusiasm, the bowler. But it was a goodish shout, but down the leg side. And the two batsmen now just having a chat, Compton and Sapphire, just saying, well, this is probably our first real test since lunch. Let's take it easy and not spoil all our good work. Probably not the conversation that the two of them had, but one would imagine it might be what they were thinking anyway. Who knows what they actually said. Anyway, Onions, that's their business. Onions is coming in, arms pumping again, bowls, and that's outside off stump, and he's bowled him. Goodness me, he's bowled him. It takes the leg stump, and it was possibly an inside edge. Beautiful delivery, and he's immediately struck.
Well, I
second ball.
Why they didn't bring on Graham Onions a bit sooner, really, but he's done the damage there, and that's a sad end in a way to Al Sapphire.
Certainly is.
Batted very well.
Yes.
Played 36, the same as Marcus Trescothick.
Great shame because he was batting really well. He's had a difficult season, a lot of criticism from different quarters, but he was playing really well, sort of put all the foundation work in there, and only for it to all be ended by Graham Onions, who really is the sort of bowler you'd dream of as a captain. He just seems to have this knack. He's in perfect rhythm, one of those run-ups where everything's right, got everything in the right place, rhythm's good. It was a good ball on off stump, and it just was as Dean Elgar comes in, hopefully
coming in now,
going to get some variations from him.
By the London Philharmonic.
Indeed. But no, that ball sort of came in a little bit fraction outside off stump, and it kept a little bit low, perhaps a small inside edge, and it flicked the leg stump back. So it most unfortunate. Sapphire bowled Onions for 36, Somerset 132 for 2 now.
Very timely wicket from a Durham point of view.
Yes.
Because Somerset were just beginning to get away. So going to be interesting to see what happens now with Elgar coming in. Compton, of course, is still there. He's on 50.
Yes.
So they're both having a chat. Maybe Compton will consolidate and Elgar will play his shots. But Elgar's done quite well since he's been here.
Well, yes, it's been a summer for composers this year with Elgar and Wagner, and it's a shame Strauss isn't around anymore, but it's enough of such talk. Let's get that back to the cricket, and Dean Elgar is just sort of making, well, he's sort of, with his foot, he's really making creases there in the footholes there, just sort of bedding in, as it were. He's similar to the way that Trott will announce his arrival at the crease by almost making himself at home with his foot there on the crease as the dust rises. Anyway, he's waiting now, bat slightly raised to Onions, and that's on middle and leg and played up to mid-wicket, who runs across and he takes a quick single. So well done him, straight off the mark. Positive start.
Well judged, Ron.
Yeah, a little bit of clapping behind us as well, good to see. Crowd here appreciating the nuances of the game and the subtleties, and Onions here. Now, obviously, Compton, this is a very important wicket. He has to keep going. He has a completely different package in Onions now, and England to England, as it were, in a sense. Not sure when Onions played his last Test match. It's been a while. And he comes in now, arms pumping, driven straight and hard down the ground. Nice stroke. He's going to get one. He's come back for second. Yeah, there's a fielder out on the boundary who fields that, and they come back for 2 runs. It was a nice straight drive past the bowler, and again he's playing that shot really well this afternoon, the straight drive. Trademark stroke. Such a correct technique, really, Compton, which makes it all the more disappointing when he plays these sort of shots away from the body, because you feel his technique is really, really, really good as he waits. Bat slightly raised, though, in the modern way, and leaves that one, and that's good. He left that alone. He wasn't tempted to flash at it. It was in that corridor of uncertainty, as Boyks always says, outside the off stump, and he just sort of left it alone and had nothing to do with it. There's a mid-off and a mid-on. There's a cover, there's a point, there's a gully, there's 2 slips. Quite a offside heavy field, really, again. See probably more your leg side players like Trescothick that you put a few more men on the leg side for, I presume. Trescothick, who batted pretty well this morning till he got to 35 odd, but Onions in again, bowls a quicker one, and he's sort of inside edge skews it, if there's such a word, up to the mid-wicket, who runs in from the boundary, sort of goes about halfway there, further than it would have simply an inside edge, but it wasn't an entirely convincing stroke. He took a single, and that's the end of the over, so good first over from Onions. Taking the crucial wicket of Sapphire, the first wicket after lunch, bowled him. Nice ball as well. Second ball back, I think, from in a new spell. So there's a short leg just getting ready with a helmet being thrown to him. And City Point not in place now. That the spinner had Buckley in place for quite a few overs for Sapphire. That seemed to be a tailor-made plan. For Sapphire.
He took some punishment in the last over.
Yes. Anyway, shall we see any more straight drives as Buckley comes in and bowls, and that beats it. Oh, it's possibly a drop at first slip. That took an edge. Compton's annoyed with himself, hits the turf as he runs a quick single. That's not been signalled a leg by. So yes, I think that was a drop catch at first slip. He came forward. It wasn't a proper drive. It was a sort of forcing stroke off the front foot. Ballooned over to first slip, who dropped it, and who now moves across to do the same position for Dean Elgar, the left-hander, who once again does all this with his feet, just sort of at the popping crease there, and just kicking the turf away and making his own guard. But yes, that was outside edge and dropped there. So a life for Compton, perhaps luck favouring the batsman who has concentrated so hard. It'd be a shame. That's probably only his third false stroke that I can think of since lunch. There's a silly point now in as well for Dean Elgar as as he comes in. And he bowls a good delivery actually, but it's nicely played, forward defensive, back to the bowler, and we've got a silly point and a square leg, one slip, a point. Mid-off, mid-on, a cover as he comes in again, and he goes back and cuts it nicely to backward point for no run. Played that shot a lot in the last match. I saw him hit that, I think it was 28 in the game against Yorkshire. He was looking really good until he got out, of course. But he was looking good until then. He's in again, and there was a big appeal for LBW, and they take a quick leg by. That one's trickled away to the boundary for 4 runs, actually. And it is signalled 4 byes. So, there was a big appeal for LBW there, but from Buckley, but the umpire having nothing to do with it. And it trickled away down to the boundary for 4 runs. So, exciting stuff at the moment. We had a totally sedate situation for the batsman for quite a few overs, where it all looked very easy. But in the last couple of overs, things have really heated up since Onions came into the attack. As Dean Elgar once again, left-hander, bat raised again, waits, he bowls, and that's wide outside the off stump and left alone, but not wide enough to call the wide. The sun's still beating down here at Taunton. The sun is beating down. It's a lovely day for batting as Elgar's in, and that's a flatter, faster one, but he goes back and he cuts it beautifully away. Past point. He's running out to the boundary, and he fields it. Yes, well done. 2 fielders actually out there, one passing it back to the other, as is the usual style these days. But that was a nice cut stroke. He seems particularly strong outside the off stump when he goes back to cut. He has a really nice technique there for that stroke, and he just went back and spanked it away for a couple of runs, I assume. Did he take 3 or was it 2 there?
2, I think.
2, yeah.
Ben.
And as a seagull flies in across the commentary box. So that's the end of the over. The end of the over, the score is 143 for 2, Elgar on 3, Compton 54, and Sapphire was out for 36 as Onions gets ready.
Yes, it's going to be great, but there's no chance for run out. That concludes the over, and I think now we're going to have a little break for drinks.
Yes, well, it's certainly well-earned drinks, you have to say. It's a warm day out there. It really is beginning to peak, the temperature, you feel. I just went outside the box and it was really getting quite warm. Certainly one of the warmer days that I can remember this year so far. And these two sticking together, two batsmen you feel that would look to get big scores today. I think Elgar's keen on vanquishing the ghost of his teammate Peterson in terms of matching him for big runs, and Compton having a well-earned gollop of water there, and it's thirsty work out there. But yeah, Durham I visited a few years ago. I liked it because it was had a lot of history, and the cathedral is so magnificent, and it's almost, you're almost in Scotland really. You're as far north I think as you can go virtually without being out of the country. I think one of the furthest places anyway, and it's a fine city. And Durham, of course, home to Steve Harmison. Of course, not sure what's happening with Steve and Ben Harmison these days. I know that Steve has had a lot of problems with injuries in recent years since the demise of his England career, so I don't know what his long-term future is and where he sees himself in a year or two's time, when his plans are.
I think Ben Harmison's gone to Kent, hasn't he?
Oh, of course, yes, of course. But Phil Mustard, of course, he had a brief time in the England set-up in the one-day team, I seem to remember, for a few years, for a year or two, just sort of was on the periphery, and I think in the 2020. But he seems to have fallen out of favour now with all the... England have got so many choices. Steve Davis is probably last on the rank now, but you've got Butler and Keyswetter and the Somerset guys for the one-day and the 2020s, but you've got Pryor, of course, for the tests. And but Collingwood, of course, playing in this game. It'd be wonderful to see him bat at some point. He's a really talented cricketer, wonderful gutsy campaigner down the years, and nice to see that he didn't just sort of give up on cricket once the international days had finished. He obviously enjoys playing the game, and why not? If you've still got talent and runs in the bank, he may as well stick around rather than just disappear. But anyway, we've got a new over on its way now. We've got Compton, of course, who, as I just said earlier, is really within the concentration zone at the moment, in a world of his own. Apart from 2 or 3 very minor blips, he has batted with great patience and classical technique. And Buckley, who's bowled a pretty long spell now, is going to bowl the next over. We've got a short leg, we've got a short mid-wicket, we've got one slip, we've got a cover and a mid-off, a long on, as it goes back and late cuts that nicely, but for no run, as that first slip runs away to retrieve the ball. Just sort of laid the bat down on it nicely, as it was about to almost go past him, as is the nature of the late cut. It's a very skillful stroke as he faces again, and he sweeps hard, and that's going to be 4 runs. Lovely shot, swept with authority, beautifully timed off the middle of the bat, no trouble at all, and away she goes to the boundary for 4 runs by the Andrew Caddick Pavilion. And thoroughly convincing stroke from Compton, who's looking statesman-like at the crease now. He played that with some authority and style, and he now gardens the wicket with his bat with some a look of a man who's a lot more relaxed as he faces the bowling and goes well forward to the young spinner Buckley. And there was a songwriter called Tim Buckley, I remember, back in the 60s, before my time really, but it's the only other Buckley I can think of, as that one's on leg stump, and he leg glances that round the corner. He's taking 1, he's coming back for a second, and it's going to be possibly 4. It is
4 leg byes.
4 leg byes. I thought he perhaps got a tickle, but not to be. He gets 4 leg byes there, and Somerset's score now goes on to 160 for 2.
Buckley's having not an easy time of it.
No.
A tough baptism, really, but
yes,
they're persevering with him, aren't they? They haven't taken him off. He must have bowled quite a few overs on the trot now.
Well, yes, as he comes in again and bowls, and that's on, off, middle and off, and played out towards short mid-wicket. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, because obviously if you've got a young chap in his first
match. You don't particularly want to dent his confidence by taking him off too soon, but then you don't want to leave him on too long if he's on a hiding to nothing either for his confidence. But anyway, he comes in, and that's outside off stump, driven through cover, and he's going to take a cheeky single as mid-off Onions runs across to retrieve, and cover looks a bit shamefaced. I think that's Stokes. He's head in his hands there for a second, looking just a little bit agitated with himself for missing that piece of fielding. Anyway, that's the end of the over. The score goes on to a sprightly 161 for 2. Compton on 64, Elgar on 7, both not out, of course. And the exciting Graham Onions is going to steam in again. He's a gutsy performer, been getting everything in the right place again. And he's a sort of bowler that there are certain fast bowlers you wouldn't bowl for love or money on a flat pitch, but that are fast, but he's the sort of one you'd try, because he does get everything in the right place a lot of the time as he bowls. But that's actually down the leg side. That's not too good at all, and it's whipped away for a quick single by Compton. Well, quick single. In the end, he pretty much jogs it down to the boundary as all the fielders change position now. We've got 2 slips for the left-hander and a gully, I think, coming across. There's a mid-off and a mid-on. There's a sort of mid-wicket, and Onions getting ready to bowl to this interesting, stylish-looking left-hander, Dean Elgar, who early days in his career as he faces, and that's outside the off-stump, quite wide, has nothing to do with that, leaves it alone to really a sun-drenched Taunton here. When we think of some of the recent scenes we've had here, of course there's talk about starting the English county cricket season a little bit differently, to say the least, i.e. abroad. Perhaps they could start it in Spain or something. Where we but I know that here in...
Whoever heard anything quite so ridiculous in all your life?
I know, it's funny, isn't it? But certainly in April they were wearing beanie hats to keep warm here. It was so cold. As Onions is in again, and that's played back to the bowler. But I should think the players might like the free nice trip abroad, perhaps. I don't know. It all seems a bit crazy, really. Just start the season a bit later. But
yes, I mean, how many county members are going to go to Spain? Perhaps they're going to lay on
Portugal.
Free aircraft to take them all. I mean, I don't know who. Honestly.
Well, again, it's a class thing. I mean, it's cricket legislating for those who are only really well off, because, as you say, most ordinary Joes couldn't go. As that's played up to mid-off by Elgar. Nice fluent shot, but the ball was in the block hole, almost a Yorker at length, really. He's good at that length delivery. Onions, never easy to get them away for runs. But he's got a good Yorker on him. Graham Onions for certain, as mid-off throws the ball over to him. Mid-on, sorry. And yes, the Marcus Trescothick stand looking particularly healthy today for crowd. As Onions comes in again, bowls, and that's short outside the off stump, but not too short. Just goes back and plays it up to cover for no run. And first slip takes his cap off for a second and kicks the turf. That's Borthwick, Scott Borthwick, who another exciting spinner, of course. We've got quite a few of these spinners around. I remember seeing the Shane Warne masterclass a few seasons ago on television with a couple of England spinners. I think one was Borthwick and one was Will Beer, taking lessons from him. As that's short, it's a bouncer, but he ducks under it, no problem at all. Wasn't going to duck into that or attempt to hook it. Goes through to the keeper for no run, and that's the end of the over. So as it comes up to 5-3, we've got Somerset at 162 for 2. Elgar on 7, Compton 65. And to my right, we've got the Caddick stand, of course, where all the players, the pavilion there, where all the players sit and watch proceedings. It's well shaded today. It's going to need it. The aluminium, perhaps, it looks like, roof there. and the flags above it. Getting a fair amount of wind going through them, one must admit. It's perfect days, but it's not too hot. It's not chilly enough for jackets, you wouldn't say, as a short mid-wicket comes in for the spinner, who comes in again, the youngster, as he bowls, and that's swept again, and just like in the last over, for 4 runs. Exactly the same. Really a carbon copy. Remote control replay, really. He whipped that away. Lovely meat and drink to Compton, balls in that department, and he whipped it away out on the leg side. Lovely sweep for 4 runs. So I think Buckley's going to have to learn not to pitch the ball there, because he'll just make hay in the sunshine, to be honest, as Compton comes down the wicket, plays it nicely down the ground to what is really a longish on, and who runs in and collects, and they take a single. That's Stoneman who does so. I believe Stoneman, doing this from memory, I believe he was for New Zealand extraction. I think, perhaps I'm wrong. I think that there was a chance of him playing for New Zealand at one time. I'll check that in a second as Buckley comes in down the leg side, comes up, there's a appeal for a catch, but not out. He didn't get anything on that, more hopeful than positive. No, I don't know where I got that from. Born Newcastle upon Tyne, do forgive me, in Newcastle. Don't know why I thought he was New Zealand, perhaps mixing him up with someone else. But short leg went for the catch there, but it came up off the pad as he's in and bowls again, and that's driven nicely up to mid-off for no run by Elgar. And born in Newcastle upon Tyne in Northumberland, Mark Stoneman. He's 25, nearly 26, 345 days to be precise, so he's not far away from his next birthday, as that's played out to cover for no run. And played for England under 19s actually at one stage, 73 first-class matches. So, but the bowler in question, this young man coming in now, Buckley, is in his first championship match as he cuts and cuts beautifully. That's going to be 4 runs. Elgar went back, and well, the variations coming off his bat are quite sweet at the moment, one must admit. That was a lovely cut stroke, went back, hit it past point. Again, no trouble at all. And it was short outside the off stump, and perhaps Buckley's spell may be coming to an end now. It's been quite a long spell. He's only 19 years of age, born in Darlington in County Durham. Ryan Sean Buckley is his full name, with his off breaks, and one imagines that perhaps that'll be his last over for a little while, perhaps. But we shall see. Perhaps one more, as Onions is now.
Yes, Graham Onions coming in from the Onions. Just saying it would be a wonderful effort if Nick Compton could go through to get a century.
It would, and I think what's most exciting about that is it would be, giving England selectors an interesting headache ahead of the Test match, the first Ashes Test match, simply because you've got Bairstow, who doesn't really deserve to be dropped. You've been playing well. You've got Joe Root, who's played well as a middle order batsman, but it's actually
outside the off stump there, goes past let go by Compton. Sorry, by Elgar.
It's interesting you should mention that first game. I think that was, 1992, because I think Sky did cover that game, because Botham played.
Yes,
I believe so, because it was quite obviously a landmark occasion, and
yes.
I've seen the footage as well in hindsight.
Yes. In comes Wood, and that's a good ball, and Elgar plays it back down to mid-on, no run.
It's interesting, Wood's action. He really crouches low just before he goes to run in on his run-up, and it's really quite a pronounced sequence of events he goes through just before he runs in. Reminds me a tiny bit. Richard Hadley used to crouch low just before he would get into the run. I don't know if he's going to do it again now, but there we are. Yeah,
yes, a little crash.
Bounds in, yes.
And Elgar slashes at that outside the off stump, through the middle of them for 2.
Yeah, kind of.
Is that your reading of the situation, Ben?
Well, yes, it was a sort of. I think one of the fielders has hurt himself a little bit there as well. Not sure how, whether he got a slight little finger on it or something. But yes, it was just a classic. It was Stokes, who's not having a great time in the field. Earlier on, he had a couple of missed fields as well, and I think just communication breakdown there between the two fielders. Both of them were going towards the ball and were thinking of leaving the other one, and it's just the classic scenario, really, where neither go for it and it ends up going through.
Yes.
But it was well retrieved on the boundary in the end, and Scott Borthwick, who of course took that televisual masterclass with Warne, I remember, I think 2009 that was, is going to bowl. He's flipping the ball from hand to hand, a little bit like Warne used to years ago, as Borthwick comes in past the umpire and bowls a flat one on off stump, and he goes back Compton and sort of late cuts for 4 runs. I say sort of because the bowler seemed to think that there was something false about that stroke, but I'm not convinced there was. There's certainly no danger to it, but it's 4 runs nevertheless past that first slip down to the boundary, so good for Compton, and great to see him hitting some boundaries now. He had a dry patch where he wasn't really getting any fours or sixes or anything even remotely close. He's on 75 now as he hits that straight back to Borthwick, who fields that well off his own bowling, and there's no run. There's one slip, there's a cover, there's a mid-off and a mid-on, there's a square leg chap on the boundary, fine leg back on chap on the boundary. There's a square leg. Certainly couldn't get on the boundary if you tried, if you were square leg. But Compton plays that nicely forward out to point for no run. And Borthwick flicks the ball from hand to hand again. And the sun relentlessly beats down on Taunton as he fades. Oh, he goes back and cuts hard, but there's a man out there on the boundary, almost like a sweeper position on the offside boundary out there, just for a single. It was a nice cut stroke, went back and hit it away fluently, but there was a fielder out there on the cover, but what is really the extra cover boundary, to a deep extra cover, to be accurate, as Borthwick comes in, and that's outside off stump to Elgar, who hits that forward nicely, but first slip runs across and retrieves the ball. And it's a beautiful scene here today. The Taunton Cricket Ground at its best, really, on days like this, as Borthwick flicks the ball endlessly from finger to finger, hand to hand, comes in, bounces in, and that's played uppishly to mid-on by Dean Elgar, but no problems, but slightly uppishly in the air for a second, and Borthwick takes his cap. He's fairly satisfied. He's bowled much more tightly there than Buckley was at the end, but Stokes and he are just having a discussion, it seems, about what the arrangement of fielders was on what would be the offside to Elgar and the leg side to Compton. Not sure what that's about, out on that fine leg or third man type boundary, depending on the batsman. But we've got Wood coming in now with that distinctive action of his, with a little crouch before he comes into bowl. And Compton is facing, and in he bounds now, full of enthusiasm, comes in and bowls, and that's a bouncer. And it's left alone by Compton, who just watches it balloon through, totally harmless. Has nothing to do with it. There is a man on the fine leg boundary, so he wasn't going to fall for hitting it down his throat. One of the few batsmen I've seen, obviously, repeatedly fall for that trap was the great Somerset's Ian Botham, when he got Andrew Hilditch out repeatedly that way back in '85. That's down the leg side and attempted to flick it away, but does Compton, attempts a leg side stroke, but he makes no contact, goes to the keeper. Yeah, I remember back in '85 these bouncers that Botham would bowl, and Hilditch just every time would hit them beautifully down to that man on the boundary. He just seemed to have a dreadful habit of doing that, and seemed to fall for it every time as Wood comes in, and that's driven nicely but well fielded by the bowler, and it ricochets off and hits Elgar, but and then goes up to mid-on. So colourful demise for that delivery. It was hit crisply back and timed well enough to be ricocheted off two cricketers out to mid-on. It was well timed. Anyway, he bounds in again, bowls, and that's short, and he pulls it majestically for 4 runs. Yes, right into the boundary board it goes. Lovely shot, easy as you like, no trouble at all. Just went back and eased it away out onto that leg side boundary. Lovely pull stroke It was just a rank long hop, really. Went back and swung around, played it down beautifully, and Compton really is timing the ball sweetly at the moment, and has definitely got 100 in his sights. As Wood, getting through his over quickly, bounds in again, crouches, reaches the umpire, he bowls, and that's a full toss down the leg side. He goes to leg glance it round the corner, almost Yorker length, but doesn't make contact, and the bowler looks skyward as if he was hoping for a little thin edge, but it wouldn't have been a very morally justified wicket, because it wasn't a very good ball. Anyway, Compton will hopefully cause, from Compton fans' point of view, a headache for the England selectors. If he gets 100 here, he'll hope for a place in that first test for sure, despite calls for his axe already, as that's played back to the bowler for no run.
Of course, we've got the Australians coming to
yes, I'm at that game, yeah.
Somerset in the end of June. And is that before the Test series starts? It must be, presumably. So if Nick Compton was to do well there, he could well again be back in the reckoning.
Well, I've got a game I'm going to over in, I think it's in Hove. Friends invited me to. Sussex playing Somerset there, and I think that's after the first test in late July, and we're playing them at the end of this month. As you rightly say, I think before the first test and after the Champions Trophy, as Borthwick again flicking the ball from hand to hand in that style of his. And he comes in now with a short leg there, and Elgar goes back and pulls it round the corner, down to the boundary for no run, for a single, just for the one run. It came right off the middle of the bat, that, and went to the fielder so quickly. But he took a single in the end, and Compton now faces. That's a fine shot from Elgar for not much. And there's a sort of short extra cover there waiting for Compton, but that's down the leg side and swung round the corner, pull stroke for a single down to fine leg. He comes and takes an easy jogged single. The two umpires stood here in the sun all day. One doesn't tend to think of it as being tiring or burning up calories, but I'm sure it is a form of exercise. That's a booming full toss down the leg side, and it's helped round the corner by Elgar down to fine leg for a single. Help yourself time there, I'm afraid. Down the leg side.
I think he missed out really in a way on that. That's taken the partnership, I think, up to 60. These two put on.
Yeah, in super quick time. As Compton waits, and that's on off stump, played out nicely. Classic forward defensive, and there's no run. But the sun continues to beat down as Compton waits. Two slips now. Borthwick outside the off stump, not tempted there at all. Compton. South Africa 46 for 2 in the Test match, in the one-day match there, the Champions Trophy, both openers out. Huge score, 330 odd by India. Borthwick now comes in, bowls, tosses it up, but Compton hits it back to Borthwick, and there's no run. That's the end of the over. A strange over. Some odd deliveries there, a couple of juicy full tosses that. And certainly a couple that Elgar would have hoped to have hit a lot further, certainly in a one-day match, that he only got singles from. So he'll feel a little bit short-changed with his own treatment to those particular deliveries. But Somerset now, interesting period of relative consolidation. No great alarms in this innings so far, but you just feel that when these two can get to a century for a partnership, that they'll feel much more. A huge total is possibly on the cards. The score 192 for 2 now. Elgar on 20, Compton on a fine 81. He's been there now. He's hit 9 fours and 1 6, and
opened the innings, of course, with Trescothick, and he's now facing nervous 90s T.
Yes.
And, 24 to Elgar. And I'll let Ben describe the final over before tea, which I think it will be.
Yeah, I mean, it's that was a strange stroke there.
in the last over, nearly a wicket perhaps, but it was a confident-ish appeal, but manages to get through to tee Compton more or less here. Let's hope for him, his sake, that he does. He's batted really well, and they will look to raise his bat for 100 after tee. And Borthwick now is going to come into Dean Elgar. One slip, there's a square leg, and he drives that out on the offside. Nice shot for a single out to cover. Yeah, these two umpires, Bainton and Jesty. I remember Trevor Jesty, I think, played a few matches for England, I think, perhaps, in the early 80s in one-day cricket. I'll have to check, but good to see him here. We've got, of course, another 80s England man in the Champions Trophy, Tim Robinson, was watching last night. Umpire. There's two slips for Compton as he waits for Borthwick, and that's outside the off stump and left alone. Trevor Jesty. Yes, he did. My memory was correct, looking at my playfair here. ODI debut, 1983. Last one, 1983. Wonder how I managed to remember that from my childhood. Anyway, that's cut away by Compton. Past point. That's going to be 4 runs. No, it's not. It stops it beautifully, actually, out on the boundary. Well stopped. And thrown in really well. And he took a couple of runs. And the man out there took up, managed to cover a lot of ground there very quickly. And save 1 or 2 runs there. So well done as Borthwick comes in again. There's a mid-off, mid-on, a cover as he comes in, and it's played back to the bowler. Perfect forward defensive. In the one-day game, I know that things are going on apace there. Elgar will keep an eye when he gets in to see that South Africa is 69 for 2, but scoring quickly as Borthwick comes in, and that's chopped down in front of him by Compton, a kind of whip stroke. But certainly in that trophy yesterday, our Somerset lad, Jos Buttler, certainly lit up the tournament with extraordinary innings. Quite extraordinary, actually. Some bizarre strokes. And Borthwick getting ready to come into Compton bowls, and that's left alone. Spins outward like an booming outswinger once it had pitched. Compton has nothing to do with it, and that's the end of that particular over. And Somerset 208 for 2, Elgar 25, Compton on 92. Overs remaining now. I think, I'm not sure actually. Is that
32?
32, yes.
Normally they take tea, but they're not doing so, presumably because it's not quite 20 to 4. So presumably we'll have at least one. This might be just one more over before tea.
Yes, and Wood's going to come in again. He of the endless enthusiasm. He's young bowler, making his way in the game. Comes in now, past the umpire to Elgar, and that's outside off stump, played out to point, and there's no run. And he's 23 years of age. He played for Northumberland before, and Durham Academy was where he was schooled, and born in 1990, so very young. And he's a bit like Steve Harmison, you could say, in his bounding approach to the wicket. And he comes in again and he bowls. And that's a good ball in the block hole. Because going in, a good in-swinger, but Elgar was up to it, played it up to cover. But the fielders and bowler looked like they knew that he bowled a pretty good one there. But Elgar knew it and played it with respect. There's a mid-off, a mid-on, a cover, a point, a wideish gully. There's 2 slips. There's a man out on the long leg boundary, I think. Yes. As he's in again, Wood bowls outside the off stump, left alone. And it goes through to the keeper, and they take no run. Phil Mustard, of course, belligerent, pugnacious left-hander, hits it many a mile, had a little flirtation with England a few years ago. Good player. And, of course, thankfully it seems the mustard and onions jokes have come to an end. They just need someone called Cress, and they'll be well away. Anyway, that's hooked round the corner, pulled round the corner more, down to the boundary on the leg side for a single by Elgar. Nice stroke, but only the one in the end. Not a great delivery, but Compton now, resolutely patient, measured innings, correct,
Only 2 or 3 false strokes in it. A good innings here now. He waits. 92 not out. Bowls and plays that back to the bowler nicely. Forward defensive, bat and pad close together. Any hopes for me of commentating on Compton's century? Maybe a hopeless hope, I'm afraid, because tea is imminent. But not to worry. Compton will breathe easy that he's made a good statement here already. He'll just want those extra 8 runs as he waits. 2 slips crouching bowls, and that's a good Yorker. Good Yorker from Wood, but kept out by Compton, who was up to it completely. He played it really well, and that's the end of the over. So they are not motioning towards the pavilion, to my colleague's surprise. There is going to be another over, I think. I'm also surprised because it has gone 22. So, but it looks like Borthwick is going to bowl another over. So, lucky me. I get my 3rd over to commentate on, which is always a pleasure. But thank you so much, of course, to our listeners for joining us. It's been a wonderful afternoon's weather and an interesting afternoon's cricket, quite entertaining. Hope you've enjoyed it too, as Borthwick comes in, and that's outside off stump, and a strange stroke by Elgar. He backed right away, almost right towards the leg slip that's there around the corner, waiting for a false sweep, and he sort of punched the ball out onto the offside, a kind of cut stroke, making a hell of a lot of room for himself, and Borthwick ran across and fielded off his own bowling, spins it from hand to hand like a Pakistani spinner, and he comes in and it bowls a flat one on the off stump, but he late cuts it deftly, despite the fact that had he missed, he would have took the off stump out. The bowler looks skyward. They take 2 to the 3rd man boundary. He must have a very good eye, Elgar, because that must have been right in front of the stumps when his bat hit that one. But all's well that ends well, and he takes a couple of runs. There's a short leg, there's 1 slip, there's a leg slip, there's mid-wicket, there's a mid-off, mid-on, one more of a cover really, as Borthwick comes in again, bowls again outside the off-stump, goes back and cuts that away, down to the boundary, extra cover boundary for a single. So Compton living to fight another unexpected over. There's a slight overthrow there. They could have perhaps risked an extra single there, but didn't. Not sure Compton really fully took that in. I think he's just concentrating for the break, really, for the interval. Compton on 92, 2 blows away from what's been a fine 100. Only really only about 3 or 4 false strokes. There was a flash outside the off stump, not many. It's a sign of good innings if you actually remember the exact number, as he plays that really well back to the bowler. Forward defensive, bat and pad close together. Totally textbook stuff there, very coaching manual stuff. And Borthwick spins it from hand to hand again. 2 slips crouch and wait. Short mid-wicket walks in and it's left alone. And there's no run. Score in the Champions Trophy match, 80 for 2. Looking forward to seeing the West Indies play in that tournament. I can't see how they can get Samuels and Sarwan in the same batting lineup, because they both bat the same spot, but they're both in good nick. Love to see them both bat together. Anyway, Borthwick in again, and that's outside off stump, left alone. I think that's going to be tea. It is tea. There's some clapping behind me. With they can't wait to give Compton a good hand. They want to let him know what they think. It's been an incredibly intense innings, a very concentrated innings. He's concentrated incredibly hard all morning. He hardly hit any attacking strokes at all. It was very quiet. But he's been much more fluent this afternoon. He hit a beautiful 6 down the ground, which came right towards the commentary box, which was really thrilling, I have to say. And he is looking in fine nick. Sapphire really is the sad case of the afternoon's play. He was batting also pretty beautifully, to be honest. So it was very sad when he went, because he really was looking really good and like he was going to get a big score. Anyway, as you can hear, there's a big hand for Nick Compton as he walks into the pavilion. Some of the cobwebs will be blown away. It must be a incredibly intense experience playing for England, and there's so much more scrutiny these days with all the media and everyone trying to put their full penneth in about this, that and the other. So it'd do him good to come back to Somerset, back home, to relax and see familiar territory and get his mojo back, so to speak. The two chaps out on the wicket are just sweeping away. Ground staff, there's a wheelbarrow there and the dust is rising as he sweeps away and cleans up the wicket. Somerset at the break then, 212 for 2, Elgar 29, Compton not out 92. Trescothick was out, caught Borthwick bowled onions for 36 in the morning, and this afternoon Sapphire bowled onions for 36. Compton's batted for 240 minutes, 195 balls, 11 fours, 1 6, and the bowling figures before I turn to my fine colleague. Onions, 14 overs, no maidens, 2 for 28 with an economy rate of 2 and over, which is fabulous. Matthew Wood, 14 overs, 1 maiden, 0 for 39. Ben Stokes, 14 overs, 4 maidens, 0 for 28. Paul Collingwood bowled, but not this afternoon, 5 overs, 2 maidens for 10. Buckley, who bowled a lot after lunch, 13 overs for 59 runs, went at 4.5 and over, and Borthwick 6 overs for 31 at 5 and over, perhaps suggesting that this isn't the best surface for spinners, certainly in the sun. So Somerset, who chose to bat 212 for 2 at the break. So what was your feeling about that session?
Well, a very good afternoon. I think Durham were a little bit frustrated. They couldn't get that breakthrough, but thanks to Nick Compton, Somerset now in a strong position at 212 for 2, and they'll seek to build on this in the final session of play.
Yes.
It's been a pleasure for Ben Manning and myself, Paul Harper, to be with you this afternoon, and we'll hand over after tea to Nicky King and Edward Seaborn. So from us two, goodbye.
Yes, goodbye from us both. Goodbye. Ben Manning speaking here from the county ground in Taunton. We've got a wonderful scene in front of us here. We've got the sun has gone in. It's not quite as sunny as it was yesterday, but this is an attractive fixture. We've got Somerset playing extremely well. Compton, of course, just got out before lunch. Fine innings from him, a fine century. Somerset 432 for 8. As I say, I'm Ben Manning, and joining me this afternoon is Nicky King. Good afternoon, Nicky.
Good afternoon, Ben. Yes, it's been a good morning's play here today. Somerset have made 96 in the morning session for the loss of 3 wickets. Compton out after his very good 150, and Meshta and Trago both out.
Yes, indeed, and Compton played well again this morning, but we've got Buckley coming in for the very first over after lunch. And taking strike is Dockrell, the Irishman, who stands, bats slightly aloft, gets a juicy full toss, but more or less in the block hole in the end, and played back to the bowler who picks it up off of his own bowling. And the sun not out and beating as it was on Taunton yesterday, but it's not cold or anything. It's still a nice day. Buckley in again, bowls, and that keeps slightly low. But it's played off the back foot up to mid-off, who is Graham Onions, a former England man. And there's no run again. The score 432 for 8. Dockrell on 13, Overton on 16. As Buckley comes in again, bowls, and that's on Midland leg and played up to short mid-wicket really, who runs across and shines the ball. The ground today almost as full as it was yesterday. The Marcus Trescothick stand looking mighty fine again as Buckley in, bowls outside off stump, quite short, forced out to cover where it's fielded, and then thrown at the stumps, an attempt to run out the man backing up, but just went past him in the end, and thankfully for no overthrows, the fielder there managing to back up really well as Buckley's in again and bowls, and that again keeps quite low, but he plays it back. Dockrell might be interested in this low bounce here that the spinner's getting, perhaps the wicket beginning to wear a tiny bit as Buckley's in again and bowls, and that's a full toss played back to the bowler. The batsman might feel slightly like he's lost out there, but that's the end of the over. No great happenings in that over there. No wickets all boundaries, and the score goes on the same, really, 4:32 for 8. And the last man, Meshta, was out for 12 just before lunch. 65 overs remaining today. So who are we seeing from the other end? Are we getting 2 spinners after lunch, or? Yes, we are. Scott Borthwick is coming on from the other end. I always remember that Shane Warne masterclass where he gave Borthwick and Will Beer, I think it was, some lessons on television a few years ago now.
Yes,
and,
I remember that. He did one with Max Waller one year as well,
yes.
didn't he?
So Scott Borthwick, who tends to twang, if there's such a word, the ball from hand to hand in a sort of a la Pakistan sort of fashion, really. He's doing it now as he trots and walks in and spins it up, flights it, and it's driven up to mid-off, and they take a quick single. That was the exciting young Overton, who's on 17 now, facing there. Saw him play the other night in a Pro 40 game. He really is an exciting talent. I'd assume England are keeping a very close look at him. He looks very exciting indeed, as Scott Borthwick, another talent, comes in and bowls a flat one down the leg side. It's pulled round the corner by Dockwell, who just jogs a quick single down to the man on the sort of fine leggish boundary, and they take a single there. So the light's getting noticeably dimmer here. It's not panic stations in terms of play, but it's not quite the usual that we had yesterday. It was so lovely and bright. That's tossed up and driven, but no, he's missed it. In fact, that's beaten him. He was looking up in the air as if he'd hit it there.
I was looking over the both of them had for that one.
Yes, but he missed that one completely and went through to Mustard, who took it without any trouble at all. So Borthwick in again, bowls a dreadful ball down the leg side, and he's heaved that away. That's going to be caught. It's over the boundary, and it's 6. 6 runs. He went back and pulled it round. No trouble at all. It was in the air for a long time. Graham Onions thought about trying to catch it, but probably thought, well, I won't hurt a finger because that's going to go for 6 anyway, which it did. He might have got a hand on it.
I think he was lucky there because he hit it straight at Graham Onions, and it was literally just over his head, wasn't it?
It was indeed. So Overton, a happy man, gets a full toss, drives it through the offside, out towards the cover boundary. There's a man out there who fields. They're thinking of a second, they don't. They just get one in the end. And Mustard takes the return. So exciting stroke there. He went back and pulled it round the corner. It was a strange, flat, miscalculated delivery, really. I think it just slipped out earlier than he expected, the bowler, and it just ended up meat and drink to the batsman down the leg side. But like you say, it could have been a catch. That's tossed wildly up in the air there from the bowler, really flighted, but he gets a single down to mid-off, and does Dockrell, the Irishman, and that sees him taking strike for the next over. That was really flighted, that one.
I don't know how much Will Smith gets paid, but boy, it should be quite a bit standing at short leg to some of these balls that yesterday afternoon and today.
Yes.
He's been ducking and diving out of the way there.
Yes. It's quite a dangerous position, but so for the third over we've got Buckley again, who's bowled a hell of a lot of overs in this match. We've got Onions at mid-off, we've got a mid-on, we've got a sort of shortish mid-wicket, we've got a square leg, just the one slip. And there's men on the fine square leg boundary as well, as Buckley's in again, and that's forward. Batsman goes resolutely. Dockrell, who of course Pakistan very nearly were beaten by Ireland. It was a very close match. I think it was a tie in the end, wasn't it?
I think they played 2 matches. The first was a tie and the second Pakistan won.
And that's swept around the corner by Dockwell. He's taking one down to the square leg boundaries, coming back for the second, and does it well and gets a good hand from the crowd here as well. So this is good positive stuff by these tail-enders, really rubbing salt in the wound of the bowling side here. And Durham Somerset fixture not going according to plan for Durham at the present, really. Somerset in a good position as Buckley comes in, and that's a quicker one on middle and leg, played out to square leg, who bobbles the ball up from one hand to another. And that was an exciting match. Sad that Ireland aren't in this Champions Trophy at the moment. I know West Indies were doing really well last time I looked, as Buckley comes in again, bowls. That's down the wicket, and he heaves it down the ground. He's going to get 6. Yes, he does, right into the covers here. Bangs on top of them, the rain covers, with a satisfying thump. And he came down the wicket and really no trouble at all there. Just a little shimmy down the wicket and drove it down the ground for 6 runs. So Buckley not having a great match here, and it's his debut as well. So he'll be, well, it's difficult for a captain. You feel you don't want to take them off too quickly when they're young and dent their confidence, but then you don't want to dent their confidence by them getting a hiding on a wicket that isn't doing much for spin. But it was a fine stroke, getting down the wicket and hit it over long on or mid on well, there is a long on now. Ben Stokes on the boundary, waiting for a catch.
He wouldn't have caught that.
No, it was well over his head. As flat one, then he goes back, pulls it round the corner. This is exciting stuff. It's going to be 4. Yes, goes into the boundary. And this is exciting stuff from Somerset. 4.54 now for 8. 4.50 had come up. And Dockrell just swung it round to the leg side boundary there. No trouble at all again. And this is very pedestrian bowling. So you wonder why Onions, in this slightly failing light, hasn't come on. It's not that dark. Anyway, 1 slip and a square leg weight and Crouch. He comes down the wicket again, drives it up the ground. That's going to be another 4. Yes, it is. Goes past Ben Stokes, who runs across from mid-on, but he really long on, but he really didn't stand a chance of saving that one, and it went past Onions at mid-off like a tracer bullet. So convincing stuff here from Somerset, who end the over on 4.58 for 8. Dockrell on 31, Overton 24. So wonderful stuff so far for Somerset.
This is a good partnership, this, isn't it? Doing very well. I think they have to be positive. I think this morning maybe the only real sort of criticism were maybe that Somerset let things drift a little bit early on, because I don't think the ball was doing a great deal for either the...
An exciting passage of play. As we get a good hand here from the crowd, it was an exciting passage of play, and certainly the Somerset batsmen rubbed the salt in the wound there, really, with their exciting batting there at the end of the innings. And Scott Borthwick, well, perhaps a minor little note of positivity to the end of the innings for him, but he'll be on a hat-trick in the beginning of proceedings next time with his first ball in the second innings, whenever that will be. But it was a couple of little wickets there at the end to cheer him up. But to be honest, Durham will be mighty worried coming out to bat. They'll want to keep batting and batting. But the problem is, it's not quite the perfect batting conditions we had yesterday when it was hot sun. We've got a few seagulls flying in above the flats on our left, and the sun is in. The Quantock's looking quite misty in the distance. Couldn't really inspire a romantic poet from here, because it's you can't really see much of it because there's a sort of low mist hanging over. So it's quite humid though. But much more bowler-friendly conditions than they were yesterday, as the ground staff sweep the wicket, and you might hear the sound of machinery as a motor vehicle comes onto the pitch as well. But yes, so not quite the perfect batting conditions. So Somerset now in a really strong position of they'll be looking to get opening wickets, quick wickets, and certainly the conditions are a bit more conducive. You'd say it would swing in this kind of weather at the minute, looking at it, so we shall see.
I'd like to see a little bit of swing. We've got the heavy roller out on the pitch. I'll just go through the wickets that have fallen today for you. Compton caught Mustard, bowled Buckley for 166. Next man out was Trigo, caught Championship cricket this year either. So who would you bring on to share the opening ball?
Well, I would... It is a difficult one, because I would obviously, you're going to pick Overton to come on from one end, but I'd probably give Hussain a bowl, mainly because I think these sort of conditions are quite conducive to a kind of... You look at Overton and say he's a bit quicker than Hussain. I don't know if that's the case accurately or not.
Oh, I'm sure he is.
But you'd assume that a bowler who's perhaps a bit more medium would get more out of this wicket at the moment with the conditions as they are, slightly overcast conditions. So I'd be tempted to open with those two. That'd be my choice. Overton's in really good form, bowled really well the other night. Thankfully, he doesn't seem to be in any trouble. He's just practising over at the wicket that's on the closer to the leg side from here, boundary. if you've got the bowler coming in from this end, that is. But he's over towards in front of the Colin Atkinson pavilion, to describe better for listeners, and he's running in, doing practice deliveries to one stump as we speak, and he doesn't seem to be limping, because the other night he fell over and he's follow through in that Pro 40 match, and he did go off for a minute, but he seems fine, that no limps there at all, so he's looking really good and eager and fit, and in fact Hussain is just joining him for a little practice session in the middle, so that suggests rather that those two will be coming in. I can, for those listening who perhaps are out and about and are interested in the one-day match but kind of can't listen to two things at once, Pakistan are 157 for 9, doing not too well there with 6 overs to go against a strong West Indies who's performed well, but Misbah-ul Haq is on 85 not out, I see. Though Rue not dismissing him when they could have done perhaps earlier. But yes, we're getting back to the match in hand, and the fielders there just getting ready there on the boundary as well. So positive body language from Somerset, and they really will look to press home the advantage.
I think it's certainly today, it's looking very much was a good toss to win yesterday.
Oh, yes.
I think that having lost a few tosses recently on a sunny first day, the one that springs to mind, certainly the match up in Yorkshire, when the first day was a great day for batting up there, and Somerset were out in the field all day. I think that I think that the Somerset bowlers would have thanked Marcus for winning the toss yesterday.
Absolutely. Anyway, as we speak, you can probably hear a trickle of applause as Jamal Hussain practices his last practice delivery, as the umpires come out. So I think they might say, let's get those yellow stumps out of there, boys. We need to get the field set. So off they go. And the Somerset team are being led out by Marcus Trescothick, the proud ex-England man, this wonderful cricketer, really, down the years.
The team are actually all applauding Al Supplier, because I believe this is his 100th county championship match he's playing for Somerset today.
Yes, and extra applause for that. As we speak, the fielders are just gone round in a sort of circular huddle there, taking advice from Marcus Trescothick and shaking Supplier's hand as well, who's had a fair to middling season. He had a pretty poor start, and Alfonso Thomas also joins in. He's got a baseball mitt there as he pulls the yellow stump out, and they end their little congratulatory introduction to this Durham innings, as the Somerset players now get used to the normal formalities of setting a field, etc., as the two umpires take their place. And this will be, I'm sure, a very exciting afternoon session to commentate on. It's a pleasure to join you all, and certainly it's exciting few overs in hand. Somerset looking to really take a hold on this match, but Peter Trigo actually is just looking like he's going to open the bowling.
I'm not too surprised about that, because really he seems to have become the fixture as the opening bowler for Somerset. He hasn't had the degree of success he had last season bowling, but I think he certainly last year he earned his place up with the new ball, having been often second change.
Yes. I'm just wondering in these conditions perhaps too, but he's quite...
But I think the thing is that if the ball's going to swing, it's most likely to do so when it's new.
True.
And Trigo's main weapon is to swing the ball. You know, he hasn't got the pace that certainly that Overton has got, or even really the pace that Jamal Hussain has got, nor has he got the height to get the bounce.
Yeah, so he could be the perfect man, actually, for the conditions.
Maybe the man for the conditions. I'd like to see Jamal Hussain open from the opposite end as well, again, because I feel he probably gets more swing than Jamie Overton does.
We've got yes, exactly. We've got a mid-off and a mid-on. We've got a mid-wicket, an extra cover. We've got 3 slips, and they all get ready as the umpire sticks out his left arm just to get ready and steady proceedings. The crowd here, little hubbub of intense interest as they focus on Trigo running in from the Ian Botham stand end, bowls, and that beats him outside the off stump. Good delivery, showing exactly the conditions that we were suggesting there, where it would swing. It did swing, it went away from the batsman. It was a good outswinger, and he kind of tentatively went forward there, so Durham
the two batsmen, Stoneman and Jennings. Kenton Jennings, the unusually named. He's from South Africa. And Stoneman facing. He's a left-hander. And he waits for Trigo, who comes in and bowls, and that's on middle and off. Played back, sort of off the back foot up to mid-off for no run. So exciting times these for Somerset. Compton's innings, such an important one for him. And you'd hope that he gets into that first Test Ashes squad, even though there's talk of Root opening and everything else. Of course, Root did really well in the middle order. But he is naturally an opening batsman. Be interesting to know what happens. Anyway, Trigo, that's on off stump, and he's a bit late on it, and all the fielders in the slips kind of raise their arms with excitement there, and a few oohs and ahs as it goes out into the cover, to the cover fielder rather, into the covers, and Trigo with those familiar tattoos there. Reminds me of Jade Dernbach. It seems to be a fashion at the moment. And kind of one of them's covering the whole arm and the other one not quite. And don't think they wash off very easily. Trigo in again, bowls. Oh, and he goes back and hits that through into the covers, but no run again. Played resolutely. Just that false stroke of the first ball of the over. And Stoneman looking just to steady the ship after a false start there. We've got fielder there at mid-on, just having a chat. I think that's Meshta. And Trigo actually throws the ball across to him, and far too wide. And he's just going across to field it in front of the Colin Atkinson stand, which is quite full today. Botham stand, not too badly filled either. It's the Trescothick one that seems to be the most popular yesterday and today. As Trigo comes in, and that's wide outside the off stump, not troubling the batsman there.
So the padded seats up in the Trescothick stand, that's what attracts everybody up there. Plenty of leg room as well. And a good view of the cricket.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a sort of extra cover type view. And I remember that you could see from the bridge, I think before that was built, quite well actually. I think it obscures things now. Many a time a few years ago, I'd have a little look from the bridge. As Trigo comes in again, and and he beats him. Lovely ball outside the off stump through to Barrow. And another outswinger, two of them in the over. And he gets a fine hand for a fine first over. So well done him, well bowled Trigo, and she'll see now who's going to come on at the other end, and it is Overton. This exciting young bowler, Jamie Overton, now gets ready. He's a beanpole of a man, tall individual, probably about 6'3", 6'4" at least, and very long legs, long-limbed. Not quite as long-legged as Bruce Reid, the old 1980s Australian beanpole of a bowler. He used to have quite very long legs. Never seen such long legs on a bowler. Almost looked out of proportion with the rest of him. But Overton now just takes the ball back from fielder at mid-off, who is Jamal Hussain. And we're going to get the next over now. An exciting first over for Overton. As Jennings, another left-hander, is to take strike. And he gets ready. Lifts the bat slightly again, and that's wide outside the off-stump. And not having anything to do with that one either. Leaves it alone. There's quite a few in the slip cordon. I'll give you a more accurate description once they slightly disperse. Yes, there's 4 slips, I think, or 3 slips and a gully. And Barrow chatting away to them. There's a point, there's a mid-off, mid-on, there's a mid-wicket. And they wait as Overton goes past the umpire. He bowls, and that's on middle and leg, played round the corner for no run to that man out there on the leg side, who is, let me see if I can, that's George Dockrell. It's a man on the fine leg boundary as well. And the batsmen have a little chat there, and perhaps assessing the conditions. It's getting noticeably darker here. I bought my Panama hat today. That might have been a bit optimistic. I thought it was going to be another scorcher today. not quite the case, but it's not too cold either. It's quite warm, quite humid really. Overton goes past the umpire again, bowls, leaps, and that's outside the off stump. Quite a short delivery, just eased back and let it go through to the keeper. So, no alarms for the batsman in terms of wickets as yet. A couple of balls have beaten the bat from Trigo. Overton not really getting him to play a positive stroke in one way or the other really in this over, so he probably wants to get the batsman playing a bit more as he comes in past the umpire, bowls, and that's driven up to mid-off, goes through mid-off. Gamal Hussain, that's going to be one, that's going to come back for a second as well. A little bit of a misfield there, but a bit late down on it, throws the ball in back to Barrow, and they take a couple of runs. So that was a positive thing in a way that he got the batsman to play. It was an easy extra cover drive.
Just a little bit over-pitched, wasn't it?
Yes. But Overton now looking perhaps to get something in that corridor of uncertainty, as they say, outside the off stump, neither betwixt nor between, as it were. And that's betwixt. Far too wide, left it alone. Wants to get it just that length between being over-pitched and wide, really. That corridor, as they say, where you can get a batsman to play and miss. And yesterday, I remember Compton's innings was so perfect in a lot of ways, very slow to begin with. But there were a few that he flashed that outside off stump. It's always that little spot that McGrath and Glenn McGrath, Malcolm Marshall used to get, Richard Hadley, all the time, that sort of corridor of uncertainty. That one is wide and he leaves it alone, though, and there's no run. So that's the end of the over. So Durham, at the end of that over, are 2 for no wicket. Jennings on 2, Stoneman on 0. Has been... I thought that was the third over. It's actually the second over. So overs remaining today, 58. And Trigo, once again, is going to motor in and bowl as well, hopefully, as his last over. It was a fine first over. Didn't take a wicket, but he got the batsman playing and missing already. It was one off the very first ball. As he comes in with 3 slips, mid-off, mid-on, bowls, and that's wide outside the off stump and left alone. So he kicks the turf as he walks back.
I think the difference with Trigo is he comes in very close to the stumps as he delivers the ball, so he's bowling very much wicket to wicket, which is forcing the batsman to play. Overton's bowling slightly wider and bowling right arm over to a left-handed batsman. The ball's going across him and he can leave it more easily. Yes,
as he comes in again, motors past the umpire, bowls, and that's a good ball on off stump, played up to mid-off for no run. He sort of went back to that and caused a slight bit of excitement behind. Stoneman still not off the mark. And in the one-day match, by the way, just to quickly mention, Misbah Haq is 95 not out in a score of 169 with 3 overs to go. Goodness, one-man band there. Anyway, Trigo takes the ball from mid-off and comes in again, bowling about 80 miles an hour, perhaps 79, 80 as he comes in, and that's a good ball again, up to mid-off for no run on off-stump. Played nicely. There's 3 slips. There's a mid-wicket. There's a fine leg. There's a cover. Mid-off or mid-on. And there's a gully and a point. 2 slips. Or was that 3 slips? I think that's 3 slips and no gully. As Barrow just chats away with the 3 familiar faces of Trescothick there. Looking on, crouches as Trigo comes in past the umpire and bowls, and that's again on off-stump. Played out to cover for no run. And again, quite dark as we look over to the Surrey and Botham stand. There's seagulls flying across the ground, making their presence known as usual. You always have a little look in. When it's raining, they tend to fly a lot lower, right in front of the commentary box. I get the feeling they might hit it one day.
But we had one that came very close yesterday afternoon.
Yes, as Trigo in again, bowls, and that's on off stump. Again, lovely metronomic over here, everything in the right place on that off stump. Played out to cover for no run, so he's looking at a maiden here. You think?
That's gonna mess up his last ball now you've said that.
Yes. Yeah, well, let's hope not. Let's hope I haven't jinxed it. As mid-off is polishing the ball and handing it over to Sapire there, who's 100th game today. As Trigo comes in, bowling a slightly bit quicker perhaps, bowls, and that's a quicker one, and he has whipped it round the corner. That's a very convincing 4 into the boundary boards. Apologies for that. And it goes away for 4 runs. So that was sort of whipped off the back foot over into the leg side. Not a good ball, perhaps bowling it slightly quicker there. But Stoneman saw that away for 4 runs. He's 4 not out, the score 6 for no wicket. Jennings on 2, and that was down the leg side, and he whipped it over into the leg side, over to that mid-wicket boundary for 4 runs.
First commentator's curse of the afternoon there.
Absolutely, you preempted it. You knew it. You were doing a Doris Stokes there. You knew it was going to happen. There's psychic stuff going on here. But I will leave you in the capable hands, our listeners, of somebody who hopefully won't jinx us further.
Overton, and second over to Jennings. And he's defending, just plays that out on the left side, goes up to mid-on. Jennings, who's the son, I believe, of Ray Jennings, ex-South Africa coach.
Yes. It's a familiar name.
Yes.
I think there was an Aussie cricketer many moons ago who was a Jennings as well, going back to perhaps dig out my old wisdoms from my mother's collection, probably going back to the 70s, 60s and 70s.
Overton turns into Jennings, who leaves that outside off stump. It wasn't far outside stop.
Ooh, nice
and that's
stroke.
Driven straight. Ooh. And is fielded
Ouch.
At mid-off. Mid-off, he skidded as he tried to stop that ball, and he's just getting himself back up to his feet, but saved probably 4 runs there.
Yes. Ouch, I think that definitely hurt. You can see him.
Al Sapire there, he's going to trot off back to the boundary, I think.
Yeah, that's certainly stung. You could feel that from here. It was hit right off the meat of the bat, and it's one of those... Ooh, there's a nice little announcement over the PA there by Julian Catanack for Errol Sapire, congratulating him on his milestone reached, 100th appearance. And Overton is now going to motor in from this old pavilion end as he comes in and bowls, and that's on middle and off, played round the corner down to Sapire, who's busy again on the fine leg boundary, runs round, takes the ball and returns it. And there's rain actually falling, I'm sorry to report. I didn't think that was going to happen today, hence not bringing a brolly and bringing a Panama hat. I should have looked at the forecast, but it's only sort of lightish sort of rain at the moment. It's not really drizzle, slightly heavier, but you'd hope it will blow over. The players still continuing as Overton runs in again. Three slips in a gully on mid-off, and he plays that up to mid-on. Jamal Hussain, who picks the ball up, and had a nice chat with the new Taunton Cricket Ground event manager, I think she is, a lady called Rosie. I can't remember her second name, sadly, but I don't know if she's listening, but it sounds like there's a lot afoot for the ground in the winter months with events and things going on, other than the cricket, as the rain gets heavier and heavier now.
The ground staff sitting down beneath us are starting to look around, look a little bit twitchy.
Middle and off again, plays it round the corner, no run. Yes, they are, and 16 for no wicket, and it gets really heavy now, and I think the umpires, well, they might let one more ball take place, but to be honest, I'm surprised they haven't run off already. It's getting quite heavy at the moment. You can probably hear it past my voice, hopefully, in the background. Could hold the mic up for listeners, but it's making a real rattle on our aluminium roof. The old wooden beams between each part as it comes in and bowls outside the off stump. It's quite wide. They're taking a really quick single, and they do so, and that's pretty well run actually.
I think the umpires are going to have a little talk now, but I think they're going to. This rain's getting a little bit heavier.
Yes, it's
again.
Actually really heavy at the moment. I'm looking out at the dark trees and.
People are starting to scurry for cover now, as are the players and the umpires. They're going off.
Raining cats and dogs as all the fielders and umpires go off fairly slowly, it has to be said, but it is very heavy, and in a way I'm surprised the ground staff aren't even, well, they're not even running off quicker. I've seen them run off like crazy in rain like this before, but perhaps it's because it's so unexpected in a lot of ways. The ground staff are just
pulling all the covers away and going as fast as they can to get these, pulling the boundary boards away to get the covers out, and let's hope it manages to go over the ground quickly. But in the one-day match, the Pakistan match, Pakistan were bowled out for 170. They committed the cardinal sin of not fulfilling their full 50 overs, 170 at the end of their 48th over, and Misbah ul Haq was not out 96 at the end, so he'll be gutted. The score of 170 there. Probably a lot sunnier there, you'd hope, than here at the moment at the Kennington Oval over in London. It's up in London. It's certainly raining cats and dogs here at the present time, as they say. But the covers are going out, and for those just tuning in, Durham made a sedate start. Nothing too scary for them. A couple of balls beat the bat in the first over. There's not been any wickets though. There's 16 for no wicket, replying to Somerset's 458. We've got Trigo and Overton. Trigo 3 overs, 1 maiden, 0 for 12, going at 4 and over. Overton 2.3 overs before the rain interrupted, 1 maiden, 0 for 4, going only 1.6 thus far in his short spell. Jennings 4, Stoneman 12, 16 for no wicket after 5.5 overs, and the rain getting heavy.